Medical costs have risen exponentially across the board in the last 20 years. That means emergency room costs, physical therapy costs, surgery costs, and prescription drug costs. All of these things will at some point have to be combated and are incredibly important for the health of the American people. However, I think the most pressing issue is the rising cost of drugs because they're so commonly used. The definition of a generic drug is a medicine being sold using the same chemical formula as the original patent after the expiry of that patent. Generally, because of that expired patent, these drugs tend to be very low cost to produce and are therefore sold at a very low cost to the consumer. Generic drugs tend to be used in the long term, sometimes for an entire lifetime, so the fact that they're low cost per dose is essential, especially considering they can be taken daily and sometimes even more frequently than that. The reason I mention generic drugs is because they increase competition. The other type of drug we tend to see are brand name drugs, which are the ones that usually see all the price hikes. A good example of the price of drug being abused comes from a prescription drug known as albendazole, which is a broad-spectrum antiparasitic medication. Initially, it was a drug that cost less than $6 per dose to the consumer in 2010. But over the next 5 years, the price in the US rose exponentially from about $6 to about $120 per dose. Or another example is when from 2012 to 2013, a drug called captopril, which is widely used for hypertension and heart failure, increased in price by 2,800%, an increase from less than 2 cents per pill to nearly 40. Or when yet another drug named clomipramine, an antidepressant commonly used to alleviate the issues that come with obsessive-compulsive disorder, saw a price hike from 22 cents per pill to $8.32. But probably the most significant and most well-known is the exponential increase in the price of insulin over the last few decades. It went from something like tens of dollars per vial to hundreds of dollars per vial. For example, my dad actually came in while I was writing this, looked over it, and mentioned that a 3-month dose for him, for his short-term use, was going to run him over $800. And his use is infrequent, only when his blood sugar gets really, really high. A similar thing has happened with the EpiPen. Insulin and the EpiPen are pretty much the only two essential drugs whose price hikes have been acknowledged and combated. For example, here's some clips of congressmen and women talking to representatives for the big 4 insulin production companies.
My position, what do we do to try to make sure that patients in this country get access to life-saving medication that was found initially, discovered for $1 and sold to a university to ensure that every person could get access to it?
Congressman, no one should be rationing insulin.
And they do every day.
In the 2018 election, the number one concern of Americans, the high cost of prescription drugs. We have the names of people who have died because they couldn't get their insulin.
Can we just stop the innovation? If it worked before, why in the last 5 years, through innovation, we've gone from $17 or $20 up?
And here are some of the things that the CEO who raised the prices of EpiPens by 400% said.
Regarding EpiPen, we absolutely raise the price and take full responsibility for that. We embarked on investing now over the last 8 years over $1 billion in creating access and awareness and improving the product.
What do you say to those people who say that you're just another example of a bad actor in the system?
Look, here's what I would say is that that is not who we are. And I think that we've got a real opportunity now to show who Mylan is and the role we play in the U.S. healthcare system.
Really doesn't stop there either. I could go on and on listing drug after drug that saw hundreds to thousands % increase in price over the last 10 years. But let's move on to the solution. To fix this problem, there has to be a breaking up of the monopolies on pricing for specific drug corporations. We need more companies selling more products for cheaper to stimulate innovation, competition, and lower drug prices so they can be what they should be. As you heard in the video before, there are 4 insulin providers in the United States, and they all have pricing within $10 of one another for a specific amount of insulin. What we have there is a non-competitive oligopoly, also known as a collusive oligopoly, which is illegal. The most reasonable step forward is to weed out any shady or illegal business in the medical world and increase funding for small production companies just trying to get on their feet, causing prices to fall and maintain a sustainable business model. But as individuals, that's not exactly something we can do directly. We have to make our voices heard. I urge you to do something about this. I would suggest going to writecarolines.org and signing their petition to reduce drug costs, or call your representative, or email your representative, or send your representative a letter, and let them know that without regulation, you believe the drug industry will continue to exploit those who have no choice but to buy their product. This is one of those things where, if it's not affecting you right now, it will almost definitely affect you at some point. So let's make sure by the time it gets to that point, generic drug prices aren't something that will significantly alter your lifestyle. And if you want to go more in depth on this topic and its threats to the health sector or the American people, watch the documentary by Vice on HBO called Inside the Fight for Drug Transparency. It's filmed from the perspective of patients and follows their fight to make the drugs they need to survive cheaper.